All right, we're back. The podcast is here. We're clipping at about one podcast every half a year. So,
Hell
um,
yeah.
yeah, we're nailing it. Joined today by multiple time cult contributor Devin Thomas O'Shea, right? You got a couple
I
things
think so.
published. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most recently, published in issue or volume 2, issue 1. I think the story was called Malachian Brain Slugs.
That's right.
Um, Devin, also known as the St. Louis Hammer. Um, yeah. How you been? What's going on?
I'm hanging in. We're having as good a time as possible in the whatever it is we're in now, the zone. How are
Yeah,
you guys doing?
I feel fine. Which I guess is like funny for the white guy in Brooklyn to say after the election.
Yeah.
Not too worried about it.
Nobody here is threatened with deportation. Nobody's probably gonna get the business end. I don't know. I'm pretty close to Trump country, so I have to be
Yeah,
watchful.
yeah. I read a pretty funny tweet the other day, that was like, in this time, just make sure to take a moment to tell your loved ones that they live in New York and Los Angeles. uh,
Yeah.
which which is like, I mean, yeah. Also, Matt's on the podcast. I guess we say hi, Matt.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm
um,
at.
Hello,
no,
Devin.
I think that's like a good way to kind of start, and it is something that I was a little curious about. Is like, you know, the running up into this election, there was this sort of like, I don't know, unexpectedness, that, or like faux unexpectedness that's occurring in kind of United States cultural centers, New York being one of them, right? Where everyone that I talk to is kind of on the same type of like 2016 mode of like, no way it'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember looking at some of the stuff that you were putting out there, saying it felt pretty energized, on the right in Middle America. So I guess I did want to start with like, how how anticipated did this feel, and what did it feel? How's it been feeling? I guess outside in St. Louis or close to Trump country.
Oh yeah. The report from Hinterland is that I was driving straight across Missouri from St. Louis to Kansas City to go to Lawrence, to do like a talk about the Turner Halls at the Max Kade Center for German American Studies. And so I was going to hang out with all these like liberal academics, and I mentioned at like dinner, I was like, man, I just like driving on the highway, you get the sense that there is, at the very minimum, a lot of small business owners on the side of the highway who love Trump. Like
Yeah,
flags. There is this massive, like, two gigantic construction vehicles, like a gigantic, like, crane, like a cat yellow crane, and then a big bulldozer that were set up to sort of like hold up this gigantic Trump Vance sign. And it looked like, I swear it looked like, some good old boys after the job got together and were like, let's do something for President Trump, and like put them together to
yeah,
like, yeah, let's rally support. So it's like a really good advertising thing. And I was just like, oh, this gives me the 2016 feeling.
yeah,
But it's it's a different, I mean, central Missouri is like just a totally foreign land. It's completely topsy turvy out there.
right.
Yeah, and to your point, Devin, like I feel like yeah, in the New York and tri-state area, I'm coming from Connecticut, a neoliberal haven, and
Hmm.
I but I'm originally from Virginia, and I was getting a lot of vibes from my Northern Virginia like family and friends who still live there, and people in Connecticut having very similar I guess they could call it like anecdotal analyses of how they really were thinking, yeah, but like this really can't happen. Like this almost shouldn't happen. Like it's like because like you just kind of like look at it like on the surface from a political standpoint on how Kamala and her aesthetics, like she objectively just ran a better campaign than Donald Trump did from like how she was able to move things forward. Of course, she made plenty of mistakes, and I would argue it's kind of a Herculean task to have 100 days out, come out, and just try to mollywop Trump when she was already a pretty unpopular figure before she even became vice president.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, but at the same time, I also was looking at some of the like the results, the polls, and also like the prevailing issues that were on a lot of people's minds. And to me, I think it mostly fell into people's pocketbooks. And I feel like because there is this celebrity aspect, probably since Reagan, there's been always kind of like the celebrity aspect of the presidency inserted into the mainstream culture that kind of gives me like of this feeling that everyone kind of puts a lot of blame and a lot of onus upon a presidential as a president as an individual and their administration as an individual, and puts a lot of blame upon that. Um, so that's how I kind of view it. Like I feel like it's kind of like been embedded in our culture that we treat the president like a king, even though we elect them.
Right. Yeah, and then they have a dial on the desk that says prices, and then you can dial it up or down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she ran a bad campaign. But I'm speaking from someone on the left, and I'm speaking from somebody who's like, I already came into the election feeling like this sucks shit either way. Like if Trump gets back in, we get like another wave of disintegration in just like the power of the government to do things like run the EPA or whatever. And then if we elect Kamala, she basically ran a campaign that was going to prove that she didn't need the base of the left, that she doesn't need the base of the Democratic Party of like organizers and campaigners and people who, you know, I have a lot of friends who are in the machine of politics in like St. Louis City, and like they knock on doors and like beat the pavement and like do the bidding of the Democratic Party, and they're socialists, and a lot of them have a lot of radical politics and are very alienated from not being able to call the genocide in Gaza what it is, or just like there's no healthcare reform really. There's not really anything on offer for like medical or student loan relief. There's no, she also campaigned on like making things cheaper, which I think you have to do because of at what Matt was pointing out of just like the president's king and they get to decide how expensive things are. Mm-hmm. But she was running, as other people have pointed out, I think, to have a coalition of like neocons. She wanted Liz Cheney. She was running to form, in fact, a new party, a new Democratic Party that encompassed both the neocon and the like old Democratic Party, and then split Trump off on the side. And that would have been awful also,
Yeah. And I guess that is kind of like product of like there is like a slight amount of relief to like a Kamala loss as well, because it does feel like this like last shoring up of like a crystallized centrist state that doesn't really care about the populace. Like it did feel like it's particularly the unwillingness to say anything about the pillaging of Palestinians, that like which could have easily just won you, like I don't know, like that would have been enough for me, and I'm pretty sure like any other like I don't know, of the at least 10 million of the 20 million that didn't show up to vote for her, probably would have been a little bit moved if she would have just said something like that. So it did feel like there was this long project that I feel like has been occurring, like probably since Obama, perhaps before, of like detaching from the actual left and creating this new centered thing that doesn't require the input of the actual left populace, and is more neoconservative than ever. And I think the Liz Cheney thing was just like such a Liz Cheney, and the Waltz thing. I don't know. I felt like she just kind of surrounded herself with conservatives. And
Well, I'll amend my statement. I was saying that she didn't run a I would say that yes, objectively she ran a bad campaign based upon the values that all three of us most likely share. But
Right.
the thing that I said she ran a better campaign in comparison to Trump's. Trump's
I
campaign
agree. Yeah.
was just a dumpster fire. Like,
Right.
it was truly just a dumpster fire. He was doing like scams. He was like selling weird Nike knockoff shoes. He was selling watches that were made in Switzerland but were actually made in Vietnam.
The watches
Like,
were kind of tough, dude. I think you need to reconsider the watches.
those watches
they had
were
blood.
trash.
They put a drop of Trump's blood into each watch, dude.
That was the
Damn,
Trump
sick.
coin collections.
Oh right.
Those are
Did you
those
see
are
the coins? Those are fucking tough.
Yeah, they were so tacky. And
Nice.
what I will say is that yes, I believe that she did run a bad campaign. And into the point about the Gazan genocide, I will absolutely say there's legitimate statistics to show that she would have probably picked up anywhere from 30,000 to 45,000 more votes just in each of those battleground states, just on the Gaza issue alone. And that can make her break, and that can make or break a lot of counties. That can make or break a lot of things. I mean, I was talking with Jake earlier before you hopped on, Devin, that Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American person in the legislative branch, actually won 77% of a district that Kamala lost.
Right.
That to me is just a pure indictment on maybe not just the Democratic Party, but the very notion of liberalism in general, or neoliberalism.
Yeah, it's the hard thing is I completely agree. It's the hard thing is well, we'll never know sort of if that would have swayed people the other way. Maybe the Democratic Party really could have stuck it to the left and run the exact campaign that the three of us would have liked, and then they still would have lost. That would have been a big shock to me. That would have really caused me to have similar 2016 reevaluating of my basic understandings of politics. But because they just ran the same playbook as Hillary Clinton, and then they did a worse version of the Joe Biden thing in a worse circumstance, it feels like we're just locked in the neoliberal loop in which each president is just this sort of Jungian readaptation of Ronald Reagan. It's just a reinterpretation of this is Ronald Reagan with tits, and this is Ronald Reagan who's a black guy, and this is Ronald Reagan who's a reality TV show star, and it's oh, these are all just, we can't get out of the Ronald Reagan loop.
Yeah.
that comment really looped me up.
Yeah, we died. Yeah, we died in the 80s, and we've been playing back the same dream for however long.
I mean, when you think about the project of American politics before Ronald Reagan, it almost always included some sort of safety net, some sort of social program. The Great Society, the New Deal, even the Reconstruction, Republicanism, that stuff was alive and still being discussed. And now it just seems like we bargain over how much to cut away at that, central material, and that's it. That's
right.
And any attempt to do a positive program is just oh well, Bernie Sanders kind of tried and just got shut out. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like another example of that is Nixon literally creating the EPA.
Right.
Like
Right.
Yeah. Or
like
wanting to do
like
universal basic income.
yes, which coming from a republic, like if a republic, a common, like, conservative or a modern day Republican heard that, saying that a Republican who had to resign because he covered up something that his agents did, um
Right.
going after a rival political party, actually also created the Environmental Protection Agency, and
Right.
also was trying to shoot for universal health care. And he also was the president that oversaw us landing on the moon.
Right.
What would you consider that person to be if you didn't call them a Republican? They would think that person's a Democrat now. They would think that
For
that's like a
sure.
straight up leftist by those standards.
Yeah. Yeah. Nixon is closer to like Mao Zedong than he is to the current Republican Party.
Yeah.
It is.
Um. Oh,
The drift is just insane. Anyway, yeah. What were you gonna say,
yeah.
James?
Oh, I mean, it is like. I guess it does make you kind of reflect on your position as a citizen or whatever the political agent. Because yeah, I mean, it does seem like the period of offering things ended somewhere around there, and then the period of negotiating what you're willing to give up started, and yeah, so now every single election is the same thing, right? It's like, well, like, things are getting tough. What are we really willing to hold on to here, and what's able to get cut? And I mean, I think like in a I'm trying to think about this in a maybe like aesthetic way, or maybe in the way that we generally understand ourselves and our culture is like moving into like a more efficient model. And I do feel like there is this like kind of like subversive um I don't know, trend within American work that has to do with efficiency modeling, and I feel like it's like almost replicated within our political activity. Is that, of course, like we won't like flinch at our like the extraneous elements of our politics, like the more dreamy things being taken away and becoming more streamlined, because that's like how we've been conditioned within the workplace. Um, I'm just thinking of like how much of this is like innate in the common American experience, to the point where like when something like this election happens and you are on the left, or you even just generally on the side of like wanting the world to be healthier and people to have a better go of things for, I don't know, an easier way. Um, how like not being offered anything at all in that light is, it can be consumed pretty easily, because it's like, I guess, at every like bastion of society, that is like how we're getting trained nowadays. I think is like, yeah, like we're moving into the most efficient model because we're entering into death times and you have to give up things, and that's your responsibility and not ours.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of just the hyper surveillance of like the Amazon workplace, where it's, that's the logical conclusion, is sort of like technically you get the option of whether or not you work here or not, but then once you're on the other side of the doors, you're just like completely surveilled and monitored and like measured in all ways. And then like I don't know. When you're saying aesthetics and like the aesthetic change in this, it also made me. There's somebody, a Trump supporter, who just said the next day after the election, they walked outside and the air just smelled cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
And so they were just like, oh man, things are just the relief. I already feel the relief, nothing has happened, but I feel the economic relief.
Yeah.
And that's such a funny like hallucination to have, of just like, dog, I'm sorry. I mean, in Missouri there are just a ton of people I know who really do think that like things are going to get measurably better now. That like Trump is going to fix things, and sure, they had 4 years of Trump before, and he didn't fix anything, but they have been convinced that he did, and so it's just this totally like we're totally abstracted from this shit.
Well, yeah, it's because it's like, I mean, it's right. It's been removed from the common experience. You can anticipate if anyone gets elected that nothing will enhance your life. It'll just get like 10% better, 10% worse within the next 4 years. And that's just kind of like the anticipation I feel like everyone has. It's like, well, like we had some good laughs with Trump at least, right? Like, let's do that again, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm far removed from knowing a lot of Trump people, and so I don't really know what they're thinking or saying. But I have talked to some, and it does seem that like when you ask like, what do you want, what did you want, and how is this president and who he brings into, I guess, power going to make that happen, you do get like pretty like empty answers. Like, I want the economy to be better. I want the wars to end. And it's like, well, like, what do you mean you want the war? Like, who? I don't know who's offering what nowadays.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The idea that there's almost this resurgence of an anti-establishment vibe that has been implanted or associated with Trump, because they still look at him as like this guy who bucks the convention of American politics, and he still does. I mean, like the idea of running a Democratic candidate who is qualified, polished, and well-to-do, and then have another one who's pretty polished, well-to-do, and kind of like, frankly, a little bit more working class than someone like Tim Walz. I think those people are like completely off. Those people are completely irrelevant now, because if you're going to try to combat someone, because the Republican Party has their playbook now, and that playbook is to find this upstart who comes from a wealthy family, and for them to kind of pop off and say whatever the hell they want and say all these terrible things about people and promise terrible things to certain groups of people, and at the same time blame them, but they're somehow humorous to watch. I feel like the Democratic Party is almost bereft of any alternative besides like a Kamala or a Pete Buttigieg these days, and I feel like there was this point in which, when you look at a Donald Trump, and you just have to kind of look at him as if similar to how Obama was, because I don't think the Republican Party is going to have the same degree of success in their next elections and trying to follow the Trump model, even though they will try, because I mean, if it worked then, it's going to work now. But the same way that you look at Obama, as truly an outlier of American politics. The guy probably faced the most racist adversarial press in probably since Martin Luther King was a national figure, or maybe even Jesse Jackson. And I find the fact that he was able to not only win once but win twice and mollywop each of those Republicans from an electoral standpoint, it just shows you how much of an outlier he was.
Yeah, I mean, he can talk. That's like, he's really good. I was like watching a Obama speech from like 2008 for some reason, and it's just like, that guy can communicate. He seems like he does want to do something for people in that moment. But again, this is just like, we live in hell, and all we're doing is meeting different demons from different levels. Of like, Trump, I think, is the like pure American, is an entity of the American psyche. He like he's now like the character of our era, because he's so American. He's so every value that like we really embody, just the fetishization of money and wealth and fame and all that shit. He is the pure ego embodiment of it. But like Obama is also just an example that we've had to learn for some reason of like also these Democratic people, these McKinsey consultant ass people who inhabit politics, they can even seem different ways. You know, John Fetterman seems like he's a working class guy. Barack Obama seems like he's a put together suit who is going to bureaucratically make my life better. And like that motherfucker bailed out the banks. That motherfucker like does not like you. He, he just really wanted to like make playlists for people and have everyone say like, "Oh man, this guy's got good cultural tastes."
His summer reading list is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, he's just got so much time on his hands to read every new novel somehow.
Yeah.
I haven't read a new novel like from someone who's come out. Like the most recent novel that I read was Zadie Smith's The Fraud, and that was like that came out last year. And the most recent book I've read ever since then was from like 2013. Like,
this guy thinks that. Yeah, what fucking world, bro? Are you going to the Barnes and Noble every week and picking like a new unheard of novelist off the shelf from Penguin? Who, let's be honest, all of them are kind of paint by numbers at this point, and you're reading all of those and then like ranking them. I mean, I think it's so clear that that's such a hustle that he's just getting sort of like back end either prestige or money for that.
And Trump's was the best one because he only put out one reading list when he was running in 2016, and he was like, "Well, obviously, The Art of the Deal is on there."
Number one, baby.
Number one, and then he was like, "Sun Tzu's The Art of War" was like the second one.
Of course.
The Art of Fucking, number 3.
Yeah.
The
Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged was on there too.
Yeah, which is also.
And then he had like Marquis de Sade on there also that he was just like really into.
Like when it's like his like notes from when he was a prisoner.
Yeah.
Let's go. I love
that'd be sick.
Yeah. I love. Well, all right. I love a conservative guy being exposed to literature and like. They're like I don't know the truth of one's understanding or desires coming out in weird ways. Like my friend's dad worked for Monsanto for all of his career, and he just retired. And he was like, hey, like I see you're into literature. Like, you know, I got all this time. Like maybe you could send me some books and I'll start to read them. And like he was telling me like the books that he found that his dad like was into were just like astounding. Like he's like, might have been pretty fucking good, dude. Like,
fuck yeah,
you like
dude.
that one? Yeah. But this feels like a good transition to I guess considering art in general and like art moving forward now and literature specifically. I mean, we're all writers here. And the thing I am thinking about is this idea of like speaking truth to power, which feels like so empty, you know, nowadays. And like and I feel like this is the end of speaking truth to power, because it's a mechanism, it's a maneuver now, and then like it's just a way to like gain social currency. So people like see what you're doing, like, oh, they're doing the truth to power thing, like let me throw some likes on that. But I don't think like there's a functional way to actually get through to people. And so like if the previous intention of speaking truth to power was to politically activate people, was to show people that there's a different way at looking at their current setting and a different way to deal with it, I don't think like direct call outs are going to do it anymore. I don't think saying things like, because they do, it happens on the right, it happens on the left. It's all just like a dunk contest, right? That's like the state of political discourse. And like, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And I guess I'm kind of curious on what everyone thinks on what this does to literature moving forward. And also, like, yeah, on top of that, like, as Devin just said, like, the contemporary novel market is just like the dumbest shit in the world. They're all the fucking same. They all look the same. They all sound the same. They're all written by basically the same person. And they're all like a personal memoir that isn't too cutting against the state. Like, that is pretty much how you get the money these days.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of opinions about that, especially, mostly like straight white guys need to be asked like what novels should be. So we should. That's why we're providing our insight right now. But
exactly.
But also, I think, the contemporary workshop and the pipeline to producing a novel from the Penguin or the Random House is like, you have to tell us the story of your traumatic experience in life. Mm-hmm. You have to narrativize your pain, and especially as that has evolved over time, your identity pain. Like, so that incentivizes us to want to publish lots of people who are underrepresented, and that is a good thing in and of itself, but that's the neoliberal sort of like, well, let's diversify who's getting a voice, and then we'll get progress from that. Whereas there is no call for, like, well, tell us the story of why your oppression through these systems, or the story of your power as a collective, or the experience at work and, like, in the struggles of, like, politics as it affects your everyday life. Mm-hmm. I think some of these novels are decorated with some of that stuff, but at the end of the day, it just feels like it's mostly about the trauma narrative and how I can personally, individually overcome my situation.
It's almost very much like a pull yourself up by your own bootstraps sort of. It's an inherently conservative ideal being uplifted by a neoliberal framework, where you have like, oh, I did this and here I am writing over it, and that is in its very act overcoming the trauma and the anger and the pain that I was feeling, because I am writing and recording, therefore I am still here, and all that jazz. But it's like, it kind of almost feels like to me that within literature, or at least the literary market, the commercial literary market, there is this classist muzzle being placed on people that are being that are against people that when I actually want to speak truth to power, because often now speaking truth to power is not just speaking truth to power of oppressive governments or unfair laws or stratified cultural groups or ethnic groups being unfairly treated by the state and by an overall society. It's also the systems that are trying to quote-unquote give voice to those people that are actually still kind of contributing to the very exploitation of those historically underserved groups, because the majority of people in the publishing industry are still straight white people. Like there's maybe a more diversified output of the actual work, but the actual people who are still behind the editorial desks still look very much like you and me. And that to me is kind of like what Jake was saying, that there's this muzzle where you can criticize enough, but if you don't criticize the very systems that's going to uplift the very writers out there. Like, there's a reason why someone like Jonathan Franzen is not writing as vociferously about climate change as he used to. There's a reason why he's not publishing a lot of essays about the current state of things. And it's not because he just, as he says, he doesn't have an interest. He clearly has plenty of opinions about all this stuff. He just doesn't want to, because that means that he'd be biting the hand that feeds him.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of the last few years reading all of the proletarian novels from the 1930s. There's just like a very brief period in American literature where the Marxist theorists your ancestors in New York City, the like they were like the coffee house intellectuals who were like interpreting the new, like the Russian Revolution and like the call for like literature to be literally produced by people who go to work every day. That was the whole idea. It's just you need to give people who are working class, who literally work, the ability to like tell their stories. There's lots of problems with that, including like where do you have the energy after working at the sheet metal factory to write a novel. But some of these novels that were produced in that era are genuinely amazing and forgotten. Meridel Lesueur's The Girl is like one of the best novels I've like read in the last few years. And it's just like, what if the bell jar was also had like a bank robbery in the middle of it, and like was all this like this pathos about like, you know, the oppression of women in society, but not in this like way that's bemoaning it. I don't know. There's like a certain tone that I think people in the bourgeois, when they try to inhabit the body of somebody in the proletariat and they're like trying to like sort of move around and decorate the room, they just are a little stiff at it. And so like, I don't know, there's just like a big movement of American literature. Like Richard Wright started out as a proletarian writer. Langston Hughes is a proletarian writer. Arne Bontemps is like another good example of like all of black literature in America is also heavily informed by this class perspective. And like, I've just found that to be very energizing, is to like go back to that period and see how they were trying to like figure these questions out. Because I think what Matt was saying is right. There's a muzzle on everybody, and it's like a class-based, you know, obscuring. It's the subaltern problem.
Yeah. So I guess in thinking about the muzzling of writers, dude, I'm nailing these fucking transitions, huh? You couldn't tell I took 2 months off from the podcast, could you, dude? This shit is too easy for me.
This is smooth as shit, dog.
Yeah. Nice with this.
I'm loving this conversation.
Speaking of the muzzling of writers by the powers that be, something did interestingly just happened in our politics. We've elected our first philosopher king, J.D. Vance, who is a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
God damn it.
And I haven't read the book nor seen the movie, but I do think it is interesting. Like, who is it? Anyone here J.D. Vance hip? Can anyone fill me in on the story?
I've read it. I read it.
Oh, you read it?
Oh, did you?
I actually worked for a PR firm where it was in 2000. I think the book came out in 2013, 2014, and maybe 2015. And I had just gotten out of college. I was working at a literary PR firm, and I was creating this interview series where we ask the writer just one question, and then they like kind of use it as a breaking off point to write about pretty much anything they want after answering the question. I was able to get some really good. It was really great. I got some people like I got Jan Martel to be on there. I got Rachel Schultz.
The tiger's not really a tiger if you think about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Ryan Amilcar Scott, who wrote Insurrections and The World Doesn't Require You, which are two great collections. I got him early on, and I was reaching out to the publicist of a one J.D. Vance because Hillbilly Elegy had come out, and
Sick.
I had read. I was like, okay, this is supposed to be like, let's read this. Like, it was lauded like by so many different people. It was long listed, I believe, for the National Book Award under memoir.
Yeah, a lot of people are acting like they weren't in the J.D. Vance camp. All right, a lot of people
They were because
really switched sides here.
It's and here's the thing. I started reading it, and I'm by no means from the Appalachian area, but I know people who are from the Appalachian area. I was born in Virginia. I lived through most of my life in Virginia, and going to those places and hearing the stories of people who come from there, they hadn't even heard of Hillbilly Elegy, and I would I'd recommend it to be like, hey, read it, like, see what you think of it, because I was about halfway through it. I was like, see what you think of it. And there eventually kind of clicked in me this moment where, oh, he's not writing for the people from that area. He's writing
Right.
about them and exoticizing them, and he's making these newly implanted Northeastern neoliberals like me. Before I got, pretty radicalized, I started going like, wait a minute, he just has nothing but pure contempt and almost shame for being from that area and that certain upbringing. And I'm not saying he didn't have a tough life. He had a pretty tough
Sure.
life. Like his mother was an addict, a heroin and an alcoholic, and he went through a lot as a child and a lot as
Yeah.
a teenager, and he's overcome a lot. But the thing about it is that people try to look at him as kind of like this rags to riches guy. He's just basically a dissembler. He's a social climber who got lucky.
Exactly.
And his writing style, just to kind of like make it clear, is god awful. It's just very kind of like schlocky. It reminds me like if Ray Bradbury didn't have a poetic bend and he just
Shit.
talked about kind of like how sad he was and like how he was just kind of like this stupid fat kid. Like,
Wait, that sounds kind of good.
no, it's so stupid. Like it's so bad. Like it's such an evil representation.
I'll never
of,
be vice president. I'm too stupid and fat.
and it blows my mind. It just blows my mind that there is like this that he is truly living out his American dream. If I'm being honest, he truly is. And I mean, I think because he's essentially a technocrat. He is a guy who traverses these incredible high intellectual fields, the places that a kid like him from where he's from in Trailer Park, Appalachia, would have no business being in. Yet here he is. Here he is because, frankly, he just kissed enough ass and said enough edgy things to get enough attention and rehabilitated himself in enough ways. It's very similar to how, frankly, Bill Clinton is.
Yeah, he's a class trader, and like, I don't know. I want to get your guys' take on like what the new round of like, here's my book about fascism, or like here's my like Trump whisperer book, like, because we're gonna have another round of those no matter what. That's just like how the market metabolizes things like these. But the last good one, or the opposite, J.D. Vance. Have you guys read Hinterland by Phil Neal?
No, but I've heard of it.
That is a fucking good book. That is Neal is like a real one. He got like arrested and went to prison for doing like anarchist stuff around Occupy in California. And like he has traveled all over. He's like, the book is really poetic, but it's also it's nonfiction. It's his argument is really good, and it basically says that like if you want to look for what's going to happen next in terms of like mass like unrest, you have to map Ferguson forward and notice that the suburbs are the new frontier for that discontent, and that like the suburbs are sort of the perfect blend of the rural Appalachia misery that J.D. Vance is still trying to like nostalgically bring forward as like a real American. No, most Americans live in suburbs. I mean, just around St. Louis, the suburbs go on forever and they keep building them. There's a consistent development of suburbanization that just is spiraling out of control around all American cities. And it's creating this like really weird, I think, idea of our own body politic. Like it makes us feel like people who live in a log cabin are still the American voter or in a holler, and their misery is the most real. But it's like, no, dog, the average American is like in Fentanyl County in a suburb, in a like dilapidated, falling apart suburb,
Yeah. Yeah, I am curious about the next wave um of Trump schlock. And because right, like there this like this moment of like admitting that the woes and the pain of being an American are not um existing over like the head of like some very like unfortunate populace, but like the real pain of being an American is in like the simple boredom of existing in like a soulless place like a suburb. And yeah, like that, like no one is willing to say that like I am the one in the most pain right now, because you're not to some level, but like yeah, like the discontent that does sound feel like where it comes from is like not out of like severe um underrepresentation, but it kind of out of just like severe neglect,
Mm.
which I guess synonyms there a little bit, but I think you see what I'm saying. um but
Yeah. How do
the
we turn
the
that into like a hardcover, like nonfiction book called like,
yeah,
I don't know. Sarah Kenzador is from St. Louis, and so she has made quite a good buck on doing this routine of like,
yeah,
you know, I'm going to interpret that that pain into like a thing that
right,
you can understand as a liberal.
yeah. And then, well, the other thing that I'm curious about though is that this post-election content that I've been seeing by like the major I don't know, democratic media outlets, it does feel like a little different, because it does feel like there isn't this like Trump doesn't feel like the next Hitler this time. There isn't this like triumph of the will type thing that occurred. I think
Yeah.
there does seem to be a universal recognition that a massive fumbling occurred. So I don't know, like maybe a I I'm really curious to see how the center left deals with like accepting the failure but also doing nothing about it, and how that takes form in media, because I actually don't know.
I to jump in here, n- I'm of a kind of a different light or a different bend when it comes to what's the response going to be, because I feel like there is almost like this, I would say it's probably a false signal. Um, but there is this signal out there that, America is more conservative. America has more nativist viewpoints than
Mm.
um, the majority of people who hold views like yourself, like all of us do. At least I can generally assume that. And I am maybe not so sure about like what the next anti-Trump schlock would be. I'm more concerned about, because I do think that there is maybe not a Hitlerian level of oppression that takes place, but I do think that things are going to get pretty bad for a lot of marginalized or historically underserved groups of people in the very near future. I think it's going to get pretty rough,
Right.
and I feel like because there's going to be a media apparatus that can so easily discount entire groups of people from the narrative of the media landscape, that there very well could be a bunch of what we call center left or the new neoliberals hedging and going, well, it isn't that bad. We can talk where they kind of almost justify this new, or trying to establish this new status quo. Like the idea is like very much like Heidegger. Heidegger, under the time of Nazism, he was a straight up Nazi, but he
Right.
was always kind of in his academic realms, very much kind of like catering to the Nazistic tendencies, while also not excuse me, fully endorsing it. And I call it very much like a Heidegger hedge, where people are going to be kind of going, writing books about like, well, this is how he did it, and maybe we have to reconsider like our viewpoints in order to be more relevant. And it's like, which I don't think is going to be a prevailing truth, in my opinion. I think
Right.
that if you hold on to your beliefs, very much like how the Republican Party has for the last 30 some odd years, eventually you will get what you want. Just take a look at the anti-abortion movement or the pro-life movement over the last 45 years. It is so clear that as soon as maybe a decade out of Roe v. Wade, there was a concerted effort in the late 80s and 90s up until now to erode the bodily autonomy and reproductive autonomy of women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been successful.
Devin, you got something? What's up, man?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, like, I think that the whole game now for the center to try to get through that is to fully shut out and ignore stuff that's happening. I mean, you can already detect that in the Democratic Party itself, and I've had friends who, didn't maybe possess radical politics, but were certainly like, I'm going to join the Democratic Party in 2014, and I am going to become part of the mechanism in order to do good. And, it's almost a cliche at this point to be like, well, yeah, then the machine turns you into everything you hate. And that's just the story of subtle compromises with the way things are. I mean, I don't know. The thing that it's so bleak, but there also has to be some sort of like break with the Democrats if they're not going to learn that lesson, if they are going to hunker down in their positions, which are shrinking islands. Everybody knows that about both academia and publishing and being a generally public intellectual in America. Is like they get rid of like 7 of those positions every day. So
yeah,
are you gonna be the David Brooks of the next 10 years? Are you gonna figure out a spot to hold, or are you more likely going to end up at McKinsey or at a marketing firm or something like that? I don't know.
Speaking of being a public intellectual, god damn, I'm good at this shit.
Fuck off, Jake Tapper.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang. Speaking of being a public intellectual and chasing a career and intellectualizing,
Yeah,
Devin, you got a
chasing that bag.
Chasing that bag. Devin, you got a big fat book coming out in 3 years, 2 years, in 5 years.
In 5 years. Yeah. I have the Haymarket Books picked up The Veiled Prophet.
Let's go.
Yeah. Very excited about that. I love Haymarket. They're an amazing press with like a lot of seriously good stuff, and I'm in a lot of company with their authorship of just like some of the smartest people out there. So I'm really excited about that. We're looking at like fall 2026 for that publication date, but there'll be lots of fun treats in the lead up to it, including some True Anon episodes that we've talked about doing.
Oh, sick. All right, dude. You're like a kind of a True Anon regular over there.
I know. They're gracious enough to have given me more than, I think I'm up to 4 now. The 5th one will be coming up. We're going to talk about this secret society in the lead up to the Civil War called the Knights of the Golden Circle, and all the little perverted guys who were in that.
Yeah, I tell you what, secret societies used to have it. They had good names. They had good costumes. Maybe they didn't have good rituals or good practices, but or ideas. But tell you what, dude, someone comes to my door and says, "You want to join the Knights of the Golden Circle?" I'm like, yeah.
I want to be a knight for sure.
Yeah, I'll be a knight, dude. Devin, what was the process like getting the book, man? You said you've you were exposed to some new markets, new people?
Oh yeah, I mean I've never gone through the process before, so it was kind of it's scary because it's like I I started like working on this book like 8 years ago, and
Yeah.
I did it the long way where I wrote an entire novel and like tried to sell it, and it was a veiled profit book. Still got it, but it's on the back burner. And then I wrote a pitch a couple of years ago for a nonfiction book, and then that's like got me signed with Eric Hain at Headwater, a very good agency with good ethics. And then we, did the proposal. That took forever. That took like 3 months of working on the proposal, and then we sent it out, and then we had to wait for a whole nother year for anybody to pick up the phone. And then you get like these little answers from people, and editors are reading, and it takes a long, long time. And then finally, someone at Haymarket was really interested in the pitch, and they got the idea. Like, we got on the phone and had a meeting, and it was very clear that this person at Haymarket like understood the idea and why it was important and why it was like so specifically like St. Louis is just fucking weird. It's just it produces weird metaphors in this like uncanny way for a whole host of reasons. But and then they give you a contract and an offer, and if you're a first-time author, it's like, hey, any contract is fantastic. I can't wait to sign. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was an interesting experience for sure. It's daunting. Authors are very powerless compared to these bigger apparatuses,
Yeah, God, I've been doing my own, going through the same experience, I guess, over the last like 2 or 3 years, and it is like the further you like get along in it, like the smaller you feel, which is crazy that you're like providing the product that will eventually maybe become like the thing that makes the money. But like every call you get is just like, oh, like there's 7 people behind you that like I have to somehow like reach, and you're just one of them, and it just gets
And for question for you, Devin, like the fact that it was like so daunting, and like you kind of like were dealing with like, you were probably thinking like, I recently had a collection that was looked at by 2 smaller presses, and they both said no over the last 2 weeks, which is it's all right. It's all right. They probably suck anyway. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, it's kind of like, who cares? That's how I cope, at least. But I remember in my experience, like after getting like I'd like to take a look at the manuscript from the staff, I'm like, oh hell yeah, and I thought about it every single day, every single day.
Yes.
So how did you kind of make yourself continue to make yourself sane throughout kind of like that process of just waiting and agonizing and anguishing over purgatory, basically?
Yeah, it's agony when somebody gives you that little wink of like, I'll look at your manuscript, and then you're like, oh man, are we gonna fall in love? Are you gonna be like my girlfriend? And then you're like, well, okay, I don't know. It's like I have a lot of anxiety, and I have a lot of I have problems just like managing my own internal thoughts, and so like the best thing I could do is just like have a routine of like, okay, we gotta journal about it and like make sure we're understanding the level of stress I'm in, and sort of like I don't have any power over this except to have this like almost like psychotic like belief in like my stuff needs to go in. I need to get in. I need my foot in the door. You just have to have like that weird belief that like I have something to say, and that like I I don't know. It's like I fluctuate with that all the time, but it's the other thing is like, you know, everybody talks about how many rejections, like just a ton of rejection. It's just like that. It's just the norm. I don't know. How do you guys deal with that?
I invented my own publication, so I'd never have to deal with it again.
Fuck yeah, hacked.
Yeah.
He has officially bucked the system by saying, no, it is the industry's fault, for I will
That's
do
right.
my own thing.
Not my problem.
That's a rational response. Not even kidding. Of just like this giant rusted machine. We could just build another one. It's actually not crazy. It's like not a fucking insane idea. So
Yeah, which does feel I guess on my own front, and I do submit stuff to other places, but it is typically stuff that's more in line with the thing that we're doing. And there was like about like I don't know, like the first year and a half of running this thing where I wasn't submitting to anyone, and I was just trying to make this magazine better. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that was kind of the foundation that we made the magazine upon. Was like, all right, none of these feel like correct. Like I don't like if I were to get like published by the Harvard Review tomorrow, I would be like, cool, I guess. And like that's like prestigious, right? But like I don't care. Like I'm not going on my way to read that. I don't think it looks good. I think the people that are getting published there are all like part of like the same club a little bit. And yeah, so I was like, and yeah, I don't know, like even all it took was like modifying like 3 or 4 things. Like one, like call the writer and say hi and say thank you. 2, pay them as soon as you can. 3, like make the magazine look good, like put some effort into the art. Yeah, and then like 4, like put some serious effort into like finding like interesting and weird shit. Like, and so yeah, I don't know, I guess like I was kidding, but no, I guess I'm not at all. But yeah.
So to answer your question, Devin, on mine, because I maybe not so much this year, because I've been kind of like just working on a bigger project that's just pretty unwieldy and doesn't kind of like allow me to kind of put shorter work out there as often. I would say that for me, one of the reasons why I got on this train with Jake, not only because he's a good friend of mine and I respect him as a writer and a peer, it's because I had experienced firsthand a lot of the rationale and I don't know, hurdles that you get, because I had been, I guess you could call it pretty much a little lambasted by indie lit scene folks for kind of the stuff that I was writing. One of them in particular, it's in a previous podcast, but it was I submitted something that covered in pretty heavy detail the DC sniper rampage, and that got me banned from this place. And
Jeez.
yeah, which is kind of wild. And I'd get rejections from people, and they'd be personalized responses, and some of them would be like, "We really liked it. We just think it's crazy. We just think that this is like kind of insane." And I'm like, okay, then why? Okay, whatever. And then other people be like, we kind of suggest that you don't submit this type of content to us anymore, lest it, I don't know, trigger us. And I get it. I get why people would do that, but at the same time, like, how I really kind of coped with the constant rejection is that I've become very numb to it. I look at it and I go, eh. It's a very Larry David shrug, you know. And it's like, like it's fine. It doesn't really matter. And that's why I was very much in the DC Sniper Stories case. I submitted it consistently to so many other publications over a 2-year period, and it eventually found a home. And it eventually found a home, and I'm very proud of it. And it's not an easy read, but I feel like if you read stuff that makes you uncomfortable or makes you sad or it evokes this primordial emotion out of you, I think that there's some merit to that, as
Yeah.
long as you're coming at it from like a decent headspace.
Yeah, it's like I, I think it also feeds into just like, well, who is reading any of this shit that's
Right.
produced by
Yeah.
the mainstream? It's like I
Barack
think that
Obama.
is Barack Obama is reading every single thing that comes out of Plowshares.
Yeah.
He's reading every single edition of Agni and developing opinions about it.
Waiting for the Obama literary magazine that's gonna slap.
That's gonna be sick. It's gonna be called it's like the 7 walnuts or whatever. The nuts that he ate, like he only had 7 of them every night or whatever.
Wait, what?
There was like something where Obama was like, I have 7 almonds before I go to bed, and that's my treat.
That's my treat.
That's my treat for the day.
Yeah.
Like 7 almonds. What the fuck? You're the president. Jesus.
Yeah.
You should be smoking. You should be having cigarettes. We know you love them.
Yeah.
He was
Heroin and 7 prostitutes before bed. That would be.
Yeah. That was what the code word was, actually.
Yeah. 7 walnuts. God, yeah, man.
Yeah. But the refusal of challenging work is also just like, you know, I don't know. It's like the ongoing war of literature for the last 200 years of like, well, what if I want to write about how I did a lot of visiting prostitutes in Paris and tell you in gruesome detail about all the weird sex stuff I was doing? And it's like, yeah, that moment kind of opened up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s where you could just like write some really bad shit. And it's like, yeah, it's also kind of nihilistic. And I don't know, you know, I don't know how I feel about it. It's just what happened. And like, that was productive, I think. That was like part of the literary machine of like, that asks difficult questions, even if it is like, you know, Journey to the End of the Night. That book is fucking ugly as shit and like by a conservative, you know, fascist, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know.
Or just take anything Ezra Pound ever wrote post 1936. Like it's so clear that like this guy used his incredible ability to weave language together, and it's very effective. I mean, I've listened to his speeches that he wrote like on like almost kind of like on a campaign stump for Mussolini, and they're wildly effective. They're wildly effective. But the thing is, you just got to go a little bit deeper and go like, Jesus Christ, this guy is like using his talent for like some of the most evil shit I've ever heard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's beneficial because all of those guys still exist. It's just that they're writing copy for the Democratic Party, you know, or they're writing copy for, like, you know, for Jeff Bezos to say. Like, incredibly talented artistic people work within our world to make narratives. And so if you can't read something that's challenging and then, like, incorporate it in... I think that a lot of that just underlies the weakness of the liberal sort of like worldview, where if I am challenged by something, then it presses against all these other philosophic things that I don't really have answers to. But if you have like a materialistic view of how the world works, or like a Marxist view of society or something like that, I feel as though, oh yeah, that inoculates me from reading bad shit, even if it's seductive. Because at the end of the day, Ezra Pound sucked shit. That guy was the worst. He deserved the wall long ago. And like, I don't know, I can still say the cantos are pretty beautiful. That doesn't conflict.
Yeah. I mean, he's the reason why The Wasteland is so good. Have you ever read like the original Wasteland? Like the Ezra Pound edited version of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland is, you could almost accredit it to Ezra Pound.
Really?
Kind of the Metro Boomin of his era.
Yeah, he had a lot in common with Metro Boomin. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Eliot was a lot like the Sexy Red of his generation. He was really busting it down.
It was the combo that was meant to pop.
He was the greatest. he was the greatest British poet that was from Missouri.
Sexy red. Yeah.
Something about St. Louis made him want to leave St. Louis forever and then like put green powder on his face to make him look like he is really sick. Really cool. But it's also funny because like during that era in the 1930s, you had Mike Gold in Union Square in New York, like publishing the New Masses and talking shit to Ezra Pound. Like, if you come back here to a fascist America, you're gonna have to deal with the writers of the New Masses. He was like openly, basically antagonizing him of like, we're going to kick your ass if you come back here, and like that was what was really at stake in that era. It was like a populist socialist understanding of, you know, how the world is versus very beautiful fascism. Now we have ugly fascism, and I don't know if that's working for us.
But the air smells cheaper.
It smells cheaper around here, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I am very happy with it. What about yourself, Devin?
I think we did a podcast, yeah.
Yeah, damn. And that's coming from an expert, okay? That's high praise.
I've done a few podcasts in the past, and I'd say that was
this
one.
Guy's been maybe nothing was accomplished, but we did talk for over an hour.
No, I think we got to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I think we figured it out.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say one more thing. What was I gonna say? Yeah, fuck it. Who cares? Oh yeah, dude, Matt. That's what we gotta do, dude. We gotta start kicking people's asses.
Yeah.
I am. Remember when people in Boston would talk shit about you, and you had to like hold me back from like fighting them?
Yeah, exactly, dude. Plowshares. If you come into New York City, it's on site. I'm gonna flip. It's on site. Yeah. I'll do. I'll just say like, I'll just give you the space to plug whatever you want.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Wow, what a podcast! I think we all learned a lot there. I think most importantly, I think we all became closer as colleagues and friends. Yeah, Devin, thanks for coming on. Thanks for the insights and the laughs. I think Reagan with tits is sounding like a good episode name.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty good.
You can follow Devin all over stuff. I think you're just Devin T. O'Shea on Twitter.
Yeah, I've kept it Devin T. O'Shea on everything. Thank you for inviting me on and being part of your friends and colleagues group.
Yeah.
I've got some stuff coming out soon, some more pods. But mostly I have the Veiled Prophet book is going to come out very soon. There's going to be lots of stuff in the lead up. And if you want to follow along with that, I have a dumbass Substack link that you can trust me with your email about. I've not emailed anybody in the Substack yet. I'm not going to. I'm only going to give you like a heads up about the pre-order link and then maybe a heads up about when the book is publishing. I'm going to send you so few emails you're going to forget that you're even signed up for the Substack. Okay? I promise. I will not use it for evil. Right there.
Yeah.
Yes, I swear.
Yeah. I swear I won't sell to you.
I will not.
Yeah. Sick. Yeah, thanks so much. Matt, you got anything to say?
I just want to say thank you very much to Devin. I'm so glad to have finally met you, even in a virtual sense, and your writing is fantastic. It's a pleasure to put a name to the penmanship and to the language, and I am very honored that you came on, and we're appreciative.
Yeah, and if you're ever in St. Louis, Devin's address is what?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Here's my address and a list of my fears and when I'm asleep. A rough timetable.
Yeah.
If I'm ever in New York, I'll have to come and hang out with the Cult boys. That would be sick.
Please you should. Yeah. Do you come through at all?
Never. I'm a hinterland poor person, so
Okay. Well, you gotta
it's
you gotta
expensive
couch
to
it.
get. Also, how y'all deal with all those big buildings? They don't fall on each other and crush you. It just seems. But where y'all keep the cows and the corn? I don't know. Don't make no sense to me.
They're on
So,
top of the buildings. We keep them on the roofs.
I knew it.
That's why the trains don't run on time. Sometimes you put them in the subway too.
Man, y'all are crazy in the cities there.
Yeah, I tell you what.
I'll tell you what.
Okay, perfect. Thank you everyone for listening. And until next time, this is
We'll see you all in June of next year.
yeah, this is the Cult Magazine podcast. We'll see you in 3 months.
Hell yeah.
Cut.
All right. Stop
Devin, next.
recording now.
Well, don't.